Everyone's talking about crowdsourcing, and while I understand it for some aspirational athlete looking to scunge money off family and any stranger prepared to pay something to another stranger, really, funding people into a debt arrangement, is that really going to happen? Do they really do this? Matthew Pinter is the chairman of the Crowdfunding Institute of Australia, and I guess he can set me right on this. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me on, Pete.
My pleasure.
So you're talking about debt, which is peer-to-peer lending. It's a type of crowdfunding, and it's very much about whether you have a level of trust to the other person who's taking the debt. And it seems a strange concept when we're so used to banks doing that credit checking for us. But essentially, it's a very old concept. It works in China very well, and it's been adopted heavily internationally. You've got entities like Lending Club doing huge amounts of debt. And in fact, I did a presentation with a fellow in Australia. He's got a $140 million platform up and running in 6 months.
What's the name of that?
That's Lending for Business.
Yeah, lending for business.
Just come out of nowhere in 6 months.
Okay, and so what happens? People who've got money take the punt and say, I've got $200,000 up for lending. Put your applications in, I'll see if I'm prepared to take a punt on you. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, there's lots of different models. There's a UK company here, RateSetter, which does very much the matching type of, it's a relationship where they're sort of dating, if you like.
Betfair, because Betfair does that too. People who think a horse is going to win or a person who thinks a horse is going to lose, they match it.
Probably a little bit more like a speed dating cross with a traditional bank. There's the concept of bankruptcy neutral, so that people are worried about the platform itself dying and therefore the transactions falling over. But that's something that doesn't typically apply with a standard peer-to-peer lending because of the nature of the platform. It's just introduction. There's an argument that it's better when the actual platforms provide some insurance. So there's lots of different hybrids and ways of doing that. But yeah, it's one type of crowdfunding. It's kind of interesting, but it's very catchy with low interest rates. So
why would you low interest rates when you haven't got the same kind of? I've got to explain to my viewers. Matt is a chartered accountant, and one of the most cautious chartered accountants I've ever met in my life. And here you are in crowdfunding and crowdsourcing and all that sort of stuff. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, my passion's really small business, as you know. So I see this as a fantastic area for innovative startup businesses to breach that capital gap and therefore be able to build the economy, create wealth through innovation. And there's a really big problem there because of small companies being limited in terms of how they get funded. And that's where the rewards crowdfunding came in. And the US platforms are really so successful. We're talking about billions of dollars worth of capital raised for startup innovation, and we've got great products out of it already.
But there must be some spectacular failures and some spectacular bums who are in there trying to rip people off. Particularly America. Let's not be discriminatory, but particularly America.
Yeah, look, it's actually been an interesting one because the level of fraud in this area, because of the nature of crowdfunding being very transparent, all your information's out there. You're connecting through your community to other people to vouch you. So that's a very tricky thing to do if you're, as you say, a bum. But there is actually a lead case on this in America with the FTC prosecuting a fellow who took some money off people and then spent it on moving house. So he was supposed to create a board game and ship that to people as a pre-purchase, and he failed to do so. So the consumer credit law is applying there as it should. It doesn't really matter if it's crowdfunding or not. But actually that case has created a lot of media around fraud and problems in crowdfunding, but it hasn't rung true because there's not many cases. The Stanford Uni came out with some research, and less than 0.1%. Now, I'm not going to stick or stand by that, but it's an indication of that transparency working to bring down what is a very high risk unless you understand the mechanics behind it.
Do we know how many people in Australia have accessed funding through crowdfunding, we're calling it?
Yeah. Look, it's a very tricky thing to nail down because of the use of international platforms and local platforms. What I can say is that top 20 campaigns raised over $20 million for Australians, and the majority of that, bar one standout, was in Australian dollars on Australian platforms. So whilst you tap away on your search engine and you find international platforms, the actual experience is Australian dollars raised through Australian networks, which makes sense because you've got to trust somebody to get involved.
The worry is that great salesmen have been associated with great swindles as well. That must worry you a little bit, that there's potential to embarrass or denigrate something that potentially be great. It's fantastic that small businesses can avoid banks who have been very aggressive in their lending policies towards small businesses in the past. But a few swindlers could really ruin this, couldn't they?
Yeah, well, that's why we're happy to see the federal government's announcements involving an AFSL. So that's a license which will be regulated through ASIC, and it'll provide a backbone to the industry. It'll put the platform in a role where it's not just reputational damage, it's actually prosecution by the regulator.
Okay, so you're saying that the platforms now are going to be expected to have an
only those ones that are offering equity. So this is a different class than it's currently offered by a lot of crowdfunding platforms, which are pre-purchase or donation-based. So we've got a class order that allows something like that, but it's really more angel investment with a dab of retail money.
Okay, so some people are providing money to small businesses and maybe charging interest plus taking a bit of equity as well?
No, they're
just equity.
Yeah, this is just an equity thing, and it's been championed by Bruce Bilson, and it's coming through in the spring parliament. So we're looking forward to. We've had a run of announcements in the public company structure that will apply, which are quite similar to forebears that were announced in CAMAC. The good thing about what we're talking about is proprietary limited companies, and that's where the sort of push me pull me is going on. So can we get a sort of unique combination where really small businesses can get funded, and it's very exciting.
So Matt, just for argument's sake, if for example I had $10 million, could I go to my website and just say, look, I've got $10 million to lend to small businesses, apply? Is that the way it would work?
You wouldn't actually need crowdfunding for that. Crowdfunding is more about small amounts of people who aren't currently exempt. So if you had $10 million, you'd be exempt as an investor, or you'd probably be using a fund manager or some more.
No, I'm saying, but I've got $10 million prepared to lend to small businesses. Is that as simple as it is?
If you'd like to go through one of the existing peer-to-peer networks, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you. That Society One is a wholesale-based platform. That's a great one for big money. But really, our special interest is in those small amounts of money to give the same type of access that a small retail investor could have as if somebody had a lot of money.
Okay, so you're saying if someone had $10,000 to lend,
or two grand, and that would get in the same type of investments that you would only be able to access at the moment with the $10 million type of bankroll.
Okay, mate. So if people want to know more, does your website, the Institute website, explain a lot of this stuff?
It does. It point them in the right direction, and we're certainly pulling together a lot of data across the different types of platforms.
Okay, well, so what's that website?
It's the cfinstitute.org.
CF
for crowdfunding, yes. Institute.org. Yeah, have a look. Cheers.
Always interesting talking to you about it, mate. Matt Pinter, who is the chairman of the Crowdfunding Institute of Australia. After the break, we'll see how an entrepreneur has thought outside the square to deliver patient satisfaction.